Hi everybody, welcome to another DBN video. My name's Alex, for those that have not watched the videos before. Today I'm going to be doing a 12-point solo game. It's the second in the solo game that I've played, and the reason it's a solo game is because of the lockdown for the COVID-19 virus. But the first video proved very popular, and the style of the game I will conduct as a teaching, coaching type game. So I do it in slow time, and the reason it's only a 12-point game is because the video lasts about an hour 20 minutes, and that's about long enough for anybody. So today's game is going to be 1813, which is one of my favourite Napoleonic periods, between the French and the Prussians. The reason I've chosen the Prussians is because I don't think I've used Prussians before in any of the DBN videos, and it's an interesting army. In fact, all the armies are very interesting in 1813. One point on 1813, the quality of the troops throughout all the armies in 1813 is significantly and noticeably lower than it was in previous years and previous campaigns. So anything that would have been standard line quality in 1812 would be elite in 1813 on the whole, and units that in 1813 would be classed as militia would never have taken to the field in 1812 or 1809. So let's now have a look at the two 12-point armies. Okay, here is my 12-point Prussian army 1813 for today's game. Along the front there is the compulsory issue troops on the army list: 4 line muskets, 4 militia class muskets, and 1 militia class light cavalry. That's the compulsory issue. The militia class includes the Landwehr and reserve regiments. You can see they've got the reserve regiments in a mixture of uniforms, donated by the British government for the 1813-14 campaigns and 1815 campaign as well. As I said earlier, these troops in previous years and previous campaigns were never even taken to the field. Their training is minimal, but in 1813 the Prussians were quite patriotic and very enthusiastic. So their enthusiasm makes up partially for their lack of training and equipment. The regular Prussian army was filled out with raw recruits, but the cadres were all veteran, experienced soldiers, and a lot of the cadres from the regular regiments were sent for the creation of the reserve and Landwehr, particularly the reserve regiments. So that's the compulsory issue. So the balance of the points I've spent on, I've got 2 Jaeger units. The reason I've got 2 Jaeger units is there is no light infantry units available in 1813 for the Prussians. Again, it was a training thing. The light infantry would be fusiliers, combined fusilier brigades or battalions, but in 1813 they were no different. They had no special training than the normal line, so they're not represented as a specific unit type in 1813. However, there was an awful lot of volunteer Jaeger units, and they were well funded, and they were good quality soldiers, good quality people anyway, who were trained shots. And to that end, one of these units here is classed as elite. So this is a unit of elite Jaegers, which will prove quite useful on the battlefield. But they're the only light skirmish troops that the Prussians can have in 1813, is the Jaegers. The Jaegers are best used in support. They can stand back and fire in support of infantry or artillery or cavalry, so they can be a real nuisance to the French. And the other benefit of the Jaegers is that they're very good in bad going. I've got a unit of foot artillery, and I've got 2 units of cavalry, one of which is heavy cavalry. So there you have the 1813 Prussian army. Let's now have a look at the French. So here we have the 1813 French infantry. On the front here we have the compulsory issue, and this consists of 1 unit of superior light infantry. The French were very short of trained light infantry in 1813, and only 1 unit is available. And these are classed as superior light infantry, so in the French style there can be light infantry or close order musket infantry. 1 unit of foot artillery, 3 units of line musket, 4 units of militia class muskets, and these represent the provincial regiments or the second-rate line infantry regiments. 2 units of allied muskets, and these are also militia class, and today I'm using Bavarians, and 1 unit of militia class light cavalry, and I'm using Bavarian cavalry to go with that. So that's the compulsory issue, quite a large compulsory force there. So I'm left with only a few points to spend, and I've got another foot artillery unit. I've got a unit of elite muskets, and these are Marines, and the Marines were fairly unique to the 1813 campaign. Some did survive into 1814, but they came to their fore in 1813, and they were classed as elite at that time. In previous campaigns there would have been just regular line muskets if they took to the field, but in 1813 they were full of veteran trained troops, and they were motivated with a high esprit de corps and proved themselves very capable on the battlefield. So for DBN they are classed as elite muskets in 1813, and 1 unit of light cavalry. Again, the cavalry is very sparse in the army lists for 1813, and unfortunately these light cavalry move as heavy cavalry because the horses were of poor quality and the riders were not trained very well to ride the horses. So that there is my 1813 12-point French army. Okay, here we have the battlefield. 2 feet by 2 feet, or 60 centimetres by 60 centimetres. A village, or non-linear fortification as we call it in DBN. 2 hills, bad going woods, and a bit of marsh, which is bad going, and a few little other minor movement and firing alterations to the marsh. Well, that's a bit of marsh there. So what we do first of all is decide who's attacking and who's defending. So I've got 2 dice, blue dice for the French obviously, and the white and black dice for the Prussians. Highest score is the attacker, and that's a 6. So the French are attacking, so Prussians are defending. Normally the defender will choose the side to defend from, but in this case we will throw a dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. So that's the defending side. So again, just turn it round like so. This now is the deployment area for the Prussian army, who will deploy in this zone here. Okay, I will now deploy the Prussian troops. Here's my Prussian troops deployed. I intend again to keep a central balanced defence. I've placed my artillery on the back side of this hill. Basically, for the artillery to fire, it's going to have to come forward of the centre to fire. So I'm going to have to move the gun forward one movement to be able to fire, which may well be a problem for me, but I'll see if I can manage that. I plan on occupying the village with a unit of musket infantry. I've got 1 unit of cavalry on each flank, and I've kept as a central reserve my heavy cavalry and my elite Jaegers, plus a column of line infantry and militia infantry here. So that's my central reserve. The rest of it is reasonably balanced. Okay, so let's now deploy the French in their attacking position. Here we have the French deployment. As you can see, the central part of the French deployment is this marsh, which is really awkward because it really slows troops down. It's classed as bad going, and all troops get an extra minus 100 paces if moving through it, and it's completely excluded for artillery and heavy cavalry. Consequently, it's classed as bad going, so his radius is reduced to 600 paces. That's okay on deployment. However, it will affect these units when they first move off, and I've had to deploy in a way to try and avoid the marsh, so it's awkward for deployment. Other than that, the marsh shouldn't really feature in the game. I've got, as you know, I've got 2 units of artillery, and I've decided to put my artillery on the right flank, away from the Prussian artillery, which is on the opposite flank, so I don't want to get involved in any counter battery ordeals. However, I do tend to use my cavalry and light infantry to hold and pin the Prussian right flank, and as you can see, my attack's going to go centre and my right flank. I don't really want to get involved in the woods with the Jaegers because they can be quite dangerous, but I'll probably try and attack the village and then swing over to his right flank, my left flank, French left flank. So I'll go forward and then go that way. So we'll see how the battle develops. Both sides, for victory conditions, both sides need to kill 5 units. The first to kill 5 units is the winner of the game. And baggage, the capture of baggage and the killing of a general counts as 2 casualties. The French get +2 to their first dice roll because they are attacking. So let's go for the first game turn. Cap dice throw is a 4, +2 for attacking gives me 6. That there is 6. Okay, 6. I can do something useful there. I'll move this artillery twice. should have had it attached to that infantry really, but can't have everything. So that's cost me 2. I will move this column. I'll move the lights once. Remember the cavalry only move at 300. The French cavalry only move at 300, but the militia Bavarian cavalry do move at 400. But I'll move them early because his gun's going to come forward. So that's 3. I've got 3 left. So I will move this column here. Can only move 100 for the first movement, and then 200 for the second movement. So I will move it 300 for 2. I have my Marines at the head of my attack column there, for obvious reasons. I've got 1 left, so I will move this general. He can only move 200, just get him out the marsh. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the end of the movement. There's no firing from the French because all the foot artillery is moved, and there's no firing from the Prussians because their gun is slightly behind the hill. So that's the end of the French move. Over to the Prussians, game turn 1. Okay, today's general is Kleist. Let's see how he performs today. Prussian General Kleist, and awesome start. Starts off with 6, so he's going to be able to respond very quickly to the broad French attack. So what's he going to do with the 6? First of all, I'll push my gun forward, and if it's moving, it might as well move twice. Again, I'll just use this ruler just to dictate, so I don't want to go any forward than the front of the hill anyway. I'll move the gun twice, and I'm going to slightly angle it like so, so that it can, I'll position it there on the forward edge so it can fire on the infantry and cover its right flank at the same time. One point to note on these contours, to keep things simple, uphill advantage, we have said anything within 100 paces back from the forward, from the upper edge is uphill. So that battery of artillery is classed as uphill, so it'll get uphill advantage in close combat because it's within 100 paces of the top edge of the hill. Just a simple rule. So if it was a bigger hill, one contour, it would be a plateaued top. So that cost 2. I've now got 4 remaining. I will push my light cavalry out 400 paces in that manner there. That leaves me with 3 remaining. I will occupy the village, move that unit forward. That's 2 remaining here. I'll move that out 200, move the infantry as well, so that's moved out to there. I think I've got 1 left. With that 1 remaining, I will move my infantry forward. I haven't had a chance to, I've had too much to do really there. I haven't had the opportunity to move my reserves yet, but I will. Again, nobody's firing. That's the end of game turn 1. Back over to the French. Okay, game turn 2 for the French. The commander today is General Murat. I'll try and show you a close-up, or you've probably already seen a close-up of the figure. So let's see how Murat gets on, commanding infantry, which he did in 1813. 5, that's pretty good. So, what we're going to do, I can probably fire my artillery, but I think I will move my artillery forward once more into that manner there. That's for 1. I'll continue pushing my column forward. But I'll leave my artillery where it is, and I'll swing the column over slightly. Just so I give a little bit of space for my artillery to fire. That's 2. I'll push my infantry forward. 3. Move them back into the right position. 4. Move them separately. So I've got 1 left. I will move this block again. So I like to maintain the pressure. I don't want to get too close, but I want to maintain the pressure. On the Prussians. That's it. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this gun didn't move, so this gun can fire, but in actual fact, the only thing it can fire at is the village. It could fire at the Jaegers in the woods. I suppose it might as well do. It can fire in the village, but the troops have just marched in, so they're not garrisoning, so I can't fire at the troops in the village yet. So that'll be the only firing. I will fire this artillery at the Jaegers in the woods. So the artillery fires on a 3, basic factor. The Jaegers are a basic factor of 2. However, artillery firing into bad going gets a -2, and also Jaegers deployed in bad going gives another -1 to the firer. Sorry, so that should be 0. So that's down to 0 for the French and 2 for the Jaegers. So let's need another dice. So let's see how the dice throw goes. 4, 1. So the artillery was well off target, or had very little effect on the Jaegers in the woods. That's the end of the French movement on game turn 2. Let's go to the Prussian movement for game turn 2. Okay, let's see if Kleist can keep up his good command and control. And it falls apart. 1. And the going gets tough, eh? 1. God, I can't do very much on 1. This is what DBN's about. Tough decisions. I managed to advance my infantry and my front line good, so I'll move my reserve with the 1. And where to send my heavy cavalry and my elite Jaegers. I think I need to try and take the initiative a little bit away from the French, so I will send both of them over here, see if I can start a fight. So what I will do in this case, I will move my Jaegers for 1, and I'm afraid that's all I can do. Firing. I haven't moved my artillery will fire, and that's all that can fire. He hasn't got nothing to fire, so the only firing is my artillery, the Prussian artillery, sorry, on a basic factor of 3, and I will fire. I can obviously fire at the cavalry or the light infantry, bearing in mind that I will get a -1 firing on light infantry, or I could fire on the advancing muskets, but the easiest target will be the cavalry, so I will pick on the easiest target at the moment. However, the light infantry are quite a big threat to me, but we'll see. I'll pick on the light cavalry. So the light cavalry have a basic factor of 3 as well. So it's just a straightforward 3-3, and it is a win for the French, therefore no hit for the artillery. So that's the end of the second game turn. So the battle is now starting to develop. As you can see, decisions are being made. The Prussians got off to a good start on the first turn with a cap throw of 6. They did a lot, but the second they crashed and burnt and didn't do hardly anything. So at the moment, Kleist is being very, very fluctuating between very good and very bad. So over to the French. Come on, Murat. A 3. Moderate. Let's have a go. Alright, with 3, I've got to maintain my momentum with my attack column. So I will swing that now back round into line, into straight ahead attack. As you can see with this attack column, I've got a strong attack column here led by the Marines, and I've got a provincial militia class attack column there. So I might make a decision there. That's 1, so I've got 2 left. I will keep this attack column going as well. And I will push this one up also, because this is a good quality column, so I want to get that one going as well. So that's my 3. Both units of artillery can now fire. So I will fire on the village this time. Might get lucky. This artillery, basic factor of 3. -2 firing into cover, down to a 1. Prussian muskets, basic factor of 4. So there we have it, 4-1. So artillery fire, that's a 6, and 1 is 7, and that's an 8. So close, but not close enough. this artillery here will fire on militia cavalry. Militia cavalry are very vulnerable, so they are on a basic factor of 3. The militia, they're down to a 2. Artillery, basic factor of 3. So it's 3-2 to the artillery. Oh. 6-3. There you go. Artillery have doubled the cavalry, therefore it's 2 hits on the militia cavalry, which makes them rather useless really. They can, at best, they be able to support a charge. So that's the 2 units of artillery there fired from the French. The Prussians have got their artillery. They will fire, they'll change a target and they'll fire on the lights. The French lights have a basic factor of 3. Prussians have a basic, artillery's got a basic factor of 3, but the Prussians get a -1 firing at light infantry, or skirmishing infantry, so it's them or Jaegers. So it's 3-2 to the French, but the French are just defending themselves at the moment. Both throw 3, so the French win again, so the Prussian artillery is not really causing any damage at the moment. Nothing else, there's no musket fire, no one's quite got close enough yet, but things are going to change quite quickly. Over to the Prussians for game turn 3. Okay, Kleist throws a 5. Okay, he's coming back, he needs it. Okay, so I will advance the muskets up to the forward edge of the village for 1. I will move the heavy cavalry to the back of the Jaegers for 2. I will move these out of the way, otherwise they'll just become a casualty in the next round. They'll move backwards for 300. So if I move them sideways there and there, so that's another 1. Advance the column of infantry for 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. These are now garrisoning comfortably and can shoot out. My Jaegers in the woods, still just out of range. Everything still just out of range. So, Prussian artillery to fire. The Prussian artillery will fire on the light infantry again. So the Prussian artillery, basic factor of 3. Lights, basic factor of 3. Prussians get a -1 firing on light infantry. 1-1, rubbish. That's another win for the French. French artillery this time will fire on the reserve infantry there. So the Prussian reserve infantry start a basic factor of 4. They are militia, they're on a 3. The artillery on a 3. Prussians win, no casualties. Artillery, apart from that previous shot's been pretty ineffective up to now. This artillery will fire on, can still really you'll have to fire on the artillery now, because these are now sort of masking their arc of fire. So the only target these can fire on now is the village, which is fine. So they will fire on a 3, basic factor of 3, -2 firing into cover. It's on a 1, and the Prussians have a basic factor of 4. The Prussians end up on a 7, and the artillery ends up on a 7. Nearly, but not quite again. That is the end of the Prussian move. It's all going to start kicking off now. Game turn 4 over to the French. Muir throws another 3, and he's been consistent at the moment. So, with the 3, my attack column will continue. It's 1. Bring these up. 2. I think I've made a mistake. I won't change it now because I'm playing solo, but I've been too aggressive too quickly with them. I should have waited until they came up. I'll regret this. This column has gone forward and it's left them behind. They're now coming up, but they're coming up a bit slow. I've got one more left. With that one more, I think all I can do is maintain this pressure by continuing, do I swing that in? By continuing to march this column forward. Let's see how this goes. So that's 3. 1, 2, 3. Firing then. A little bit more firing this time. I'll start from this side. The French have got the firing here. The Marines are going to be firing on the village, and the provincial troops will be firing on the Prussian infantry there, and the Prussian infantry will be returning fire with them in support. So it's the Marines versus the village, and the provincials versus the 2 units of Prussians. So I'll do that first of all. I'll do the Marines first because the French have the initiative, so they'll decide. The Marines are on a 5 because they're elites, but -2 firing into the village, so they're on a 3. And the Prussians are on a basic factor of 4. This is why it's often wise to put your elite troops at the head of the column. You've got the best chance of getting in without being shaken. Through the dice, ooh! Prussians win that firefight, so that's a hit on the Marines, like so. The next one's going to prove painful. The French are on a 3 because they are militia class, and there is 1 Prussian support, so that brings them down to a 2. And the Prussian unit is on a 4. So that's a 4-2 here in favour of the Prussians. And the Prussians definitely win that. 7-4. So that's another hit on the French infantry. The French infantry don't get the extra French column bonus that they used to get in previous campaigns. They've lost their jeu de vivre. I made a mistake again here, because I'm concentrating on explaining the things rather than concentrating on winning the game. This artillery should have fired in support of the Marines, which would have reduced them down 1. It wouldn't have made any difference, but that's what you should do with the artillery in this situation. However, the artillery can fire independently because it's more than 300 paces away, so it will fire itself on the village. So again, start off on 3, man's too far into cover, the French are on a 1 and the Prussian infantry are on a 4. It would have been better firing in support of the Marines. And again, no effect. Prussians are doing well. The other French artillery fire will be on that militia unit, so that is a 3-3. And the dice throw is 3-3, so the fire was ineffectual. Prussian fire, that haven't already done, they've got their artillery. The arc of fire for that artillery, as far as I'm concerned, that is just out, so it can't fire on that infantry. So the only targets that this artillery can fire on is them or them still. It can't fire on these because it can't see the full target because it's obscured by the light infantry. So they will again, this time they'll fire on the cavalry, so again that's 3-3. French win again, no effect for the Prussian artillery, and the only other firing is the Jaegers in the woods. Jaegers fire on a 2, and the French are just defending on a 3 because they are militia. 2, 3. That's a good win for the Prussian Jaegers. I told you they're a pain. That's a fluff on the Bavarians. And that is the end of the firing for the French. Over now again to the Prussians. Okay, Kleist. Oh, well done, Kleist. He's on a 6. It's all kicking off now around here. There's not much Prussians can do. Need to get their reserves forward. They need to sort something out here. So, first of all, let me move my reserves. I'll move these twice, which is 600. So that there is 400. And then 200 around there. That's 600. That's twice. So that leaves me with 4. I'll move these there for 1. That leaves me with 3 left. So I intend to move these forward 300. I'll put them in line there. And I will move these in there. So that leaves me 1 left. They've all moved quite a lot there. That's them sorted out. I've got 1 left, and I will sort this out. They will wheel about like so. That should work quite nicely. So that was quite good. Prussians were quite active in that turn. Let's do some effective firing. These are out of range. He will fire on him again. There is no supports, so it's a simple matter of 2, basic factor of 2, and he's just defending on a 3 because he's militia. So the French are on a 3 because they're militia, and he's on a 2. So it's 3-2. French comfortably win. So Jaeger's fire was not as effective this time. Let's do this artillery fire again onto the cavalry. So that's a straightforward 3-3. That is a win for the Prussians this time. So eventually the artillery starts to take an effect. And now we're left with this fight here. I'll fire this unit first. So he's on a basic factor of 4 for the Prussians. The French are on a basic factor of 3 because they're militia class, and I have 1. So the Prussians have 1 support, so he's down to a 2. So it's 4-2. No other supports. 4-2 to the Prussians. 1-1. So that is 3-5. If they got a slightly better one, they would have doubled him. But it's another hit and shaken on the French infantry. This one here, the French start off on a 5 because they're elite Marines. They're firing to cover, so they're down to a 3. The Prussians start off on a natural 4. However, I'm firing my artillery in support, so they're down to a 3. There we have it, 3-3 this time. Oh, big win for the Prussians. So that's 4-8. Oh dear, oh dear. Look at that. And I threw a 5 and a 1, but a 4-8, that's double. So incredibly, the Marines have been blown to bits. Never made it in. That is absolutely tragic. Have I got a appropriate dead body? Dead Marines. First blood to the Prussians. The only other firing is this artillery here, which will fire on the militia infantry there. So that's a straightforward 3-3. French win. That's a hit on the Prussian reserve infantry. That's the end of the Prussian turn, and the Prussians are doing quite well. The French are taking a bit of a slapping, and their elite Marines have been blown away in the front of the village. That's just a bit of bad luck. Okay, over to... Okay, Murat throws a 2. Ooh, definitely could have done me better than that. Okay, got a bit of a problem here then. This attack column is no longer an attack column, and this French attack column is badly shaken. So things have come to a bit of a grinding halt at the moment. I think at the moment the French are going to halt their attack there, bring forward this column for 1, and for another 1 they will swing towards the threat, like so. Which puts them in range. That's their French 2 movements. Okay, so the assault on the village has stalled whilst this column comes up, and a bit of a firefight developing at the moment. So the French dictate the sequence of firing. So we will fire. Everyone's got to fire at the closest target. So he will fire on him, and the Prussians will support with both their units. So he will fire on him with him in support, and he's just defending. So I'll probably do that one first. So he's on a 4, down to a 2, firing into cover. He's on a 4, down to 3, because the French have got artillery support. So that there is a 3-2 to the Prussians, but the Prussians are just defending, which is fairly fortunate because the Prussians won the dice throw. I can't avoid this. This is going to be grim. The French start off on a 3 because they're militia class muskets. They are shaken, so they're down to a 2. And the Prussians will be firing with 2 supports, so the French are down to 0. And the Prussians have a basic factor of 4. So here is 4-0. No other supports. Be a good one for the French to win, but sadly they don't. So they are destroyed. Now these are the same type and class of troops. So when they get destroyed in a column, the one behind has to throw a dice. 5 or 6, they also take a hit, which means that some of the troops have broken and ran with them. So it's like a bit like a morale test. But let's see. No, so they're okay. Their friends broke through them, but they've managed to maintain their formations and their morale. Okay, so the Bavarians are going to get to shoot now. Unfortunately, the Prussian Jaegers will fire in support. So this is militia muskets versus militia muskets. That's 3 each. However, they've got a support. So the French are down to a 2, and the Prussians are on a 3. It's another victory to the Prussians. The Bavarians are not faring too well at the moment. Again, I made a mistake there. That artillery could have fired in support. Probably should have, but it didn't. So it will fire independently. That's a 3-3. It worked out. The French won that. So both units facing each other are shaken there, which is an interesting situation. That's the end of this turn. The French have now lost 2 units, and the Prussians still haven't lost a single unit, but things will change. Over to the Prussians. Oh, not a good time for a 1, but that's what Kleist has got. Like I say, he's either all or nothing is Kleist with a 1. what's he going to do? Well, the Prussians are in a reasonably strong situation. So what I will do is I will bring up these reserves to try and take a bit of initiative back. The whole lot can move once for a 3. I've only got the 1, so I'll move them 300. That's it. Firing again. Start from this side, moving across. Okay, both have a basic factor of 3, militia muskets versus militia muskets, and both have 1 support. Prussians are supporting there, and the French are supporting there, and both are shaken, so they've gone from 3, 2 to 1. So both are on 1. Look at that. Well, as you would expect, shaken militia, firing on shaken militia, it was a draw, so the fire was ineffectual. Moving along for the Prussians will fire these boys in here against them, and these will fire on there against them, with them in support. So the basic factor of a 4 for the Prussians, basic factor of 4 for the French, but -2 firing into cover. So it's 4-2 to the Prussians. And the Prussians win that, as they seem to be doing with most of the firefights at the moment. It's another hit for the French. Moving swiftly along. This one, Prussians on a basic factor of 4. French on a basic factor of 3 because they're militia. The Prussians are firing in support, so the French are down to a 2. No other support, sadly they're still too far away. 4-2 again to the Prussians. Not nice. 9-3. So that's 2 hits on this provincial brigade, provincial regiment. That attack columns is in a bad state at the moment. But we don't know how this battle is going to finish. We know how it started and how it's developing, but anything can happen. Prussian artillery can fire on that advancing attack column, or the cavalry, or the light infantry. They will fire on the advancing attack column. That's the biggest present threat. So they're on a 3 and they're on a 4. Eight. So that's a Prussian artillery successfully got a hit on the advancing French column. French are taking hits all over the place. And that's it for the firing. That's all the firing. This has all been done. They've fired. Everything's fired over here. They've all fired. As you can see, a bit of a firefight, quite a big firefight going off here. All the way across the line now is just one big firefight. French column coming forward, Prussian reserves coming forward on the flank. That's the end of this game turn. Back over to the French. Okay, Murat, you're going to have to start performing. 5, it's pretty good. Right, how can the French retake the initiative? Well, obviously one thing to do is to crack on with that attack there, and to support that attack I think this needs to go forward also. And that they won't get far enough up, so what I will do, I'll drop that back, so that then forms a front line together. That's a good one. That costs 2 altogether, that for 1, that for 1, so that leaves him with 3. For 3 we need to get these boys moving. I'll have to move these separate because they both move at different speeds, remember. So I'm going to have to do something like that. This one moves 400. So that there cost me 2. I've got 1 remaining. And with that 1 remaining, I will move that attack column in that direction, so they will be firing on them with them and that artillery in support. That artillery can fire through that gap quite comfortably. You can see 2 points of the village, so that's still okay at this point. If they move any further forward, he won't be able to see the far point of the village, so he won't be able to fire. Okay, that's the French movement. Let's do some French firing. Starting over here. Right, what will happen here is if you're within 200 paces, you have to fire at your closest target. So he will fire on him with him in support. This artillery has to fire at his closest target, so the artillery will have to fire on the light infantry, but that will happen after this firing has been done. He will have to fire at him, he will have to fire at him, but he's closest, so he will fire on him with him in support. So, and he will fire in support as well. So first of all, him versus him with him in support. So the French basic factor of 4 for their advancing infantry. The Prussians basic factor of 4. No, actually he's going to have to fire on him. He will get a choice. Right, so he is firing on him with him in support because his closest target is this unit here. So 4-4, line musket versus line musket, and they both have 1 support, so that's 3-3. Okay, 3-3 there. Muskets versus musket units, both with 1 support. Oh. A French victory there for the first time. So that's 1 hit on that Prussian unit. Maybe this is the start of a change for the French. Moving swiftly along. As I've said, what's going to happen here, firing on the village, that's the closest unit. So he is firing on him and he's firing back at him because they're the closest. So his basic factor is a 3 because he's militia. He's firing into the village, so he's -2, so he's on a 1. Prussians start off on a 4. However, there is 3 supporting units firing into this combat. 1, 2, 3, all firing into that combat. This unit can choose whether, because it's exactly the same distance between the village and that unit there, so it can choose. So it's going to choose to support the fire on the village. So he now is down to a 1 because the French have got 3 supports. So this combat here is 1-1. And again, it's a victory for the French. Fluff and the Prussians. Yeah, looks like it was the French's turn, this game turn so far. We've now got this combat here, and in this turn they both start off on a 3, they're both shaken on a 2, down to a 2, and they've both got 1 support each, so that's 1-1. One. And another French victory, believe it or not. They're now destroyed. First blood for the French, which is a destroyed Prussian infantry unit. The unit behind has to test because of the same quality and type. 5 or a 6. Didn't like that. When the Prussians broke, they took some of the unit behind with them. It's not so good. So the Prussians have had a pretty bad turn so far. The only thing they have to fire is the Prussian artillery on the hill, and because it's within 300 paces they have to fight the closest target, so they'll be firing on the lights. The lights are just defending, so they'll defend on a 3. However, they get -1 because they're being canistered. But the artillery is on a 3, but they get -1 because they're firing at lights. So they're on a 2 as well. Okay. 2-2. The French win again, but because they were only defending, because they were finding that support, no effect. So again, a disappointing turn for the Prussians all round. So it's now 2 dead Prussians to 1, 2 dead French, 1 dead Prussian. So the French have pulled back quite a lot in this game turn. Murat is now getting quite a long way from his troops, so he'll have to consider moving forward. Over to the Prussians. Okay, Kleist does not need a bad dice throw. He has a moderate dice throw, is okay. 3, he can live with a 3, I think. Right, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Well, the way it works is, right, it's quite an interesting situation here. The heavy cavalry move at 300 paces. The light cavalry move at 400 paces. If you move this formation for 1 cap, it will have to wheel. And it can only move at 300 paces because it's the speed of the lowest unit. So the only way around this is to move them separately, because 300 paces will get him into there, and 400 paces will get him into there. So that costs 2, and the Jaegers are going to jog on behind. So that costs 2, so it leaves him 1 left. Well, things holding the line nicely here. With the 1 remaining, I think the sensible thing to do is to, because without a range here, is to bring that unit forward. And he can, fortunately, Kleist can still see the rear of the unit. So it's not out of command and control. So he will move this unit forward into musket range like so. And that's his 3. So the Prussians are hoping to take back the initiative because they'll certainly have the advantage in that combat. So it'll be heavy cavalry versus light cavalry, and it'll be light cavalry versus militia cavalry. So the Prussians have got the advantage there. So that's the end of the movement. Over to firing. Okay, starting over here. the Prussians, this unit fires on this unit, and both have a support. Prussians are supporting there, French are supporting there. So it's 3-3 for the basic factor because both units are militia class. Three. Both have got supports, so that's 2-2. And unfortunately the Bavarians are also shaken. So it's 2-1 to the Prussian land there. Ooh. Prussians win that quite drastically there. So blown away the Bavarians. Dig out another unit of Bavarian type troops. Moving along, the firing here is between this unit and the village. The French will choose to put 3 units in support again. So, but what I'll do actually first, I'll fire this first because I might be able to blow that unit away. So he will fire on him, and this time he will fire back in his own defence because he'll choose to fire back on there. So the Prussians are on a 4 for their musket infantry. The French are on a 3 because they're militia, but they're also shaken, so they're on a 2. No supports because he's going to be firing on the village, he has to, and he'll be firing on him because he has to. And for the Prussians, they have to fire there, and have to fire there. So it's basically just him versus him. Afraid that's the end of the French. They get blown away, and I think the French attack. This may well be the last game turn. Moving swiftly along for the Prussians then, we've got this village firing. Prussians are on a 4, basic factor of 4. However, the French have 1-2 supports, so they're down to a 2. These boys are on a 3 because they're militia muskets, and down to a 1 because they're firing into a village. So it's 2-1 to the Prussians. Equal dice throw, so the Prussians win. That's another fluff on the French infantry. Moving further along, the next firing we're going to do is this one, which is Prussian infantry versus French infantry, so that's 4-4. However, in this instance, this light infantry unit was firing in support of them, so they get a -1. The artillery has to fire on them, so they can't fire in their support. So it's 4-3 to the French. Equal dice throw again, so the French win this time. And it's another hit, making that Prussian unit shaken. Final firing, Prussian artillery versus the light infantry who have already fired in support. So we know from previous time that the artillery gets a -1 down to a 2 for firing at light infantry, and the light infantry get a -1 for being canistered, down to a 2. So it's 2-2. Oh, devastating. Look at that firing from the Prussian artillery. That's double. That's 2 hits. on the light infantry. It's rather terrible. That then is all the firing this turn. So as you saw, this time there was quite a lot. Everything all the way along the line here was all firing, all the way along, all guns firing. The only other thing now is the combat. So again, it's Prussian turn, so the Prussians dictate the sequence. And if you know anything about cavalry combat, you want to fight the one that you've got the best chance of winning first, because then you can get a breakthrough and attack the other another unit in the flank. So we will go with the heavy cavalry versus the light cavalry. So that's 4-3. The heavy cavalry have a basic factor of 4 when fighting other cavalry. And the light cavalry have a basic factor of 3. So this is a good one for, it's quite crucial if either side wins this. Well, the Prussians win that, but they haven't doubled, they haven't destroyed their opponent. It's just one hit and push back. So what happens here is the light cavalry take a hit, which makes them shaken, which isn't so good, and they go back a base depth. And because these are heavy cavalry, they have to follow up. That's just their modus operandum. So that wasn't too good for the Prussians because they cannot support this combat because they've passed the front. Fog of war, they're concentrating on fighting them. So now it's again straightforward dice throw. The Prussian light cavalry are on a 3, and the Bavarian cavalry are militia light cavalry, so they're on a 2. So let's see how the dice rolls go this time. Oh, another Prussian victory, 8-6, exactly the same result. The Bavarians take a hit and are pushed back 1 base depth, like so. What do the Prussians do? Light cavalry do not have to follow up if they don't want to, but in this circumstance I think it makes sense. They will follow up to there. Okay, so that was the end of the cavalry combat. Prussians won both lots of combat, but not decisive, which is often the case with cavalry battles. So, where are we at? The French have lost 4 units and the Prussians have lost 1. So the French are still in the fight. It could have gone the other way, but they're not. The French are still in the fight, so we go on to another full game turn. Okay, Murat, you need to pull the hat out the bag. He throws a 1. He needs to be very lucky with his combat then. 1. Well, with the 1, I think the best thing to do, without doubt, is to attack with this attack column. It's not shaken, it's pretty good, and it's facing a shaken unit. And the light infantry can go forward in support. So that's the thing to do for 1. Bang. That crashes into there, and that goes to there. And because of the fog of war and the chaos and everything, this artillery now cannot fire in support because these are involved in this combat. Complete chaos and smoke around there, so they no longer can get a clear shot into them, So the fear of hitting their own troops is enough for them not to fire. So that's the one on the movement. Firing. We'll start over here this time. Nothing's moved there. They're now out of range to them. So it's just the artillery will fire on there, and then obviously the Prussian Jaegers will get to fire. So 3, 3. Prussians win, artillery has no effect. He's supporting this combat, so he's not firing, so it's just this firing here. So it's this unit still against the village with 2 supports. So the Prussians in the village start off on a 4. French have got 2 supports, so the Prussians are down to a 2. The provincial militia class French infantry are on a 3, firing into the village, down to a 1. So it's 2-1 to the Prussians again. And that's a good win. Oh, very good win for the Prussians. That's 8-4, which is double, which blows away the provincial infantry. 5 or 6, they take another unit with them. Oh, they do. Take. Morale there was badly shaken while their friends running away. Any other firing? The only unit that hasn't fired is him, and he can't fire into this combat. Can't fire over here, so the only thing you could do would be to fire over here, and there's nothing to fire at. General's too far away, and you can't fire at generals by long-range artillery fire. Prussians have got their Jaegers to fire. So Jaegers on a 2, Bavarians on a 3. Jaegers on a 2, Bavarians on a 3. Keep knocking it, fingers a bit. Bavarians win, ineffectual fire. So that's it for the firing. It's just now the combat. If the French lose here, they might be they're going to lose the battle, aren't they? So the French dictate the sequence because it's their turn. Their best chance, believe it or not now, is with the Bavarians because the French dragoons are shaken. So we'll go with this one, which is 3-2 to the Prussians. Prussian light cavalry versus Bavarian militia light cavalry. 3-2. Oh, well done the Bavarians. 8 for the Bavarians, 5 for the Prussians, a win for the Bavarians. So the Prussians are pushed back, and in this situation, I'm sure you can see the subtleties of it, the Bavarian cavalry will not pursue. They will stand and support this combat, which could prove crucial. So in this combat here, the Prussians are on a 4 for heavy cavalry. The French are on 3 for light cavalry. However, the French are shaken, so they're down to a 2. However, the French have got supports, 1 support, so the Prussians are down to a 3. So let's see how this goes. Well, what we've got here is a draw. And what a draw means, it's worse for the French, is both sides take a hit and both sides bounce. Well, one hit on the French dragoons destroys them. They're gone. And one hit on the heavy cavalry, the Prussian cuirassier, without the cuirass. I take one hit and I pushed back. So that's the end of that turn. We now have a French dead cavalry. Sad but true. Put them on the battlefield. Dead dragoons. Now the Prussians have killed 5 French units. The Prussians have won the battle, but what you normally would do, you're playing to the end of the game turn, which means after the French turn, it's the Prussian turn. So we should now do the Prussian phase of the game turn, but it's not going to change anything. The Prussians have decisively won the battle. The French have just got creamed for some reason this time. So there we have it. That's the end of the battle. It's a decisive Prussian win. Usually in a 12-point game it's much closer, as you would expect. Equal points, you'd expect the game to be much closer, and particularly when I'm playing both sides. But sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, and as you saw today, it all went badly wrong. And I did say it may well do, with the French attack on the village, and the infantry column went forward too quickly without waiting for its reserves to come up. But we'll fight this combat just for interest's sake. This combat here. So the French infantry are on a basic factor of 4. They are an attack column, so they get +2. So they are on a 6. However, the Prussians have got 1 support, so they are down to a 5. The Prussians' basic factor is a 4. However, the Prussians are shaken, puts them down to a 3. And the French have got 1 support, so it puts the Prussians down to a 2. So as you can see in this, it's 5-2 to the French. So that should be a victory for the French, although it's academic now because the Prussians have definitely won. And there you've got it. It's 7-5. So that's a win for the French attack column. That destroys that unit, and the French attack column tests for breakthrough. Now anything but 1 or a 2, and it's a controlled breakthrough, and I'll show you what can happen here. 1. So what happens if it gets a 1, they fail to be in control, so the attack column stops. It's no longer classed as an attack column, and it cannot support anything in this combat. So that's the end of it. It destroyed its opponents, but it was very chaotic, the combat, therefore it just stops where it is. So that's the end of the game turn, and that's the end of the game. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I can play some wargaming with some of my friends as soon as possible. Please like and subscribe to the website. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.